Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I'm Jason 17 Inman.
I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson. Welcome to your Mind University, because you have stumbled onto the podcast where we take one character, construct, or team from pop culture and teach you everything you need to know about it in about an hour, except it's the new year, like Jason mentioned in the intro, so we're going off the rails like we do every new year.
The new year of 1492.
What happened in 1492?
Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
We don't study him where I come from.
He's probably not the best person to study. And,
we're more of a Leif Erikson nation.
Before we hop into what we're going to talk about today, I just want to say, Ashley,
Jason,
we're 192 episodes.
We're old.
Yeah, for a podcast.
We are.
We are quite old. But I want to thank everybody out there listening, because we're in a brand new year. It's it's 2018 now, and I just think it means a lot to me that you are listening to this podcast right now, wherever you are, whether you're in your car, subway, the tube, the underground, a mine shaft, Hawaii, any of those places.
If you work for Hawaii Comic-Con, please let us know.
I really appreciate that you're listening to this podcast, and I just want to say thank you. It's a brand new year. We have a lot of new episodes planned, and I'm really excited about Geek History Lesson this year.
Me too, and it's really nice that we've gone from recording in a closet to recording in not a closet. We've had some tremendous growth here on the podcast.
It's the best.
I'm really proud of us.
We've grown a lot.
Actually, recording in the closet
in terms of square footage
was fine.
Yeah, it was actually fine. We had a big closet.
We did.
All right, let's move into the episode that we do at the end of every year, the best of, or the beginning of every year, excuse me. Mm-hmm. I hope you all enjoyed that really off the rails Doctor Strange show that happened last week. We had a lot of people love Logan.
Yeah.
A lot of people are requesting that somehow John Steven Roca as Logan returns to the podcast.
What they really should do is they should be hitting up the Marvel animation department.
Oh, there you go.
To bring John into the TV where they could pay him money.
Okay. So let's get into the best of 2017. Now, like every year, this lists all of our choices are our opinions. We're not objectively saying that these are the best. These are just what we say that we like.
And just because we didn't pick your thing doesn't mean your thing is invalid or our thing is invalid.
Exactly.
It's just a thing.
We can all like stuff. Now, the categories that we're going to be talking about, of course, are going to be comics, movies, comic book movies, which is a new category that we introduced last year because there are so many comic book movies, TV shows, books, that's of course books without pictures, podcasts, and because we're so self-indulgent, our favorite Geek History Lesson episode of 2017.
Yes.
All right, so, to be honest with you, when I was compiling my list for this podcast, I was kind of thinking that maybe next year it needs to be comic book TV show as well, because there are just so many of them.
Cool. Let's hope we remember next year.
Well, whatever. Let's see if 2019 Jason and Ashley remember. Okay.
Probably
Ashley,
not.
Let's hop into our first category. Of course, it's our favorite category, comics.
Heck yeah.
Ashley, in the year of 2017, what was your best, favoritist comic book that you loved?
I definitely have to give it to a series that launched in February of 2017 from DC Comics, which I think unequivocally had the best year of any of the comic book publishers. Okay. Not that it's a competition.
Well, it sort of is. It's a business.
It sort of is, yeah. Super Sons!
Super Sons! Oh,
yeah. Damian Wayne comic. Can you imagine?
Wow. Listeners, mark this note in your calendar.
The next time someone asks me why I don't like Damian Wayne, remember this moment. So Super Sons has brought me a lot of joy, and that's the reason that I picked a lot of these things to be my choice, was they made me the happiest over the course of this year.
Did you find you needed a lot of joy in 2017?
I did. Okay. 2017 was a tough year for a lot of people. It was a tough year for me, so I want to celebrate all the things that made me the happiest.
I just want to put a little caveat in there. None of these downward slopes of joy were my fault, correct?
No,
all right, good.
Your fault. No.
Good. See, Geek History Lesson, 100%.
Here, best
full of joy for Ashley.
Best husband of 2017, Jason Inman is my number one choice.
There you go. Thank you.
With no runners up. I wanted to shout out Super Sons.
I would give it to Benedict Cumberbatch. I'm just saying.
He's not my husband, though.
It's a good choice.
He's probably fine.
Still a good choice. All right.
Maybe he can make a good cup of tea. I don't know. But Super Sons was a project that I was really excited for when it was announced. It was pushed back to launch at the beginning of this year. And let me tell you, Jonathan Kent is the little Superboy I didn't know I needed. I didn't know he was what I needed in the Super family. And I didn't know that giving him the lead of a book with another boy who was smaller than him was going to be so magical. And that's what it is. And some people have knocked Super Sons because it's a little silly. They have.
Oh, I haven't heard that. Interesting.
Yes, you have, because we sat together and listened to the podcast and yelled back at them. Some people will criticize this book because it is silly. The stakes are not as high as you might get in a Superman or a Batman book. These are 13 and 10-year-old children.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy watching these two characters grow together. I really enjoy the microcosm examination of their characters as they relate to the two greatest male superheroes in the DC Comics universe. And I really love the fun that they can have, because you can't always have as much fun with their grown-up analogs as you can here. And I've enjoyed watching them as a team, as a new version of the world's finest, expand into the rest of the world. Every issue has been on point. There's been no bad issues. The art is beautiful, including the fill-in art. And
Jorge Jimenez, give a mad shout out to him.
Gotta love him.
And Peter Tomasi as the writer.
Yes, they are tremendous. And honestly, Super Sons, without a question, was my number one book of the year.
That really surprised me, it's a good choice.
I have a couple runner-ups, but when I was looking at it and I was trying to look at it over
Let's save the runner-ups till we can do them together.
Cool. Over the swath of the year, it had to be Super Sons. Makes me happy every single month. I wish it would double ship.
I would say, I would disagree with you that they've been all perfect. I think there is one bad issue of Super Sons, but I'll let the listeners go search for that issue themselves.
There you go.
So just a reminder, by the way, all of our picks that we picked during this Best 2017 list will be our recommended reading.
Yes, they will.
On the Geek History Lesson website at geekhistoryLesson.com/recommended reading. So if you want to pick up Super Sons, that's where you can find it.
Heck yeah.
So.
All right, Jason, what is your favorite comic of the year that is not Super Sons?
Is not Super Sons. I kind of forgot Super Sons. That's interesting.
How could you forget Super Sons? I went back and looked at all the new series that launched this year.
Oh, good point. My series is something that really surprised me. And when this was announced, I did not expect to like it. And everything about it was like, this is going to be a comic book that I'm not going to like. Because not only was it a comic book, it was a comic/prose experiment that was printed in an oversized format. My comic book of 2017 is AD After Death.
I am surprised that is your choice.
Yes, by Scott Snyder and co-written and drawn by Jeff Lemire. Basically, it's the whole story about what if we found the cure for death. And years after the discovery of curing death, one man started to question everything, leading him on a mind-bending journey that will bring him face-to-face with his own past and his own mortality. Now, again, like I said, this was a really weird mix of Jeff Lemire's watercolors along with pages of prose. Now, every page of prose had a little picture there that Jeff Lemire would draw. And to be honest with you, I years ago never was a huge fan of Jeff Lemire's art. But to be honest with you, the more and more I read of it, I've become a fan of it over Sweet Tooth and stuff like that.
I would agree with that.
It's really, really grown on me. Jeff Lemire has this really haunting illustration style that I think conveys emotions really well. This story was more emotional than I ever expected it to be. And again, I was not looking forward to reading a prose comic book. In fact, I tried to read the first issue when it was originally published. I did not like it, and I actually was able to read it all in one go on the train as we were riding around New York Comic Con. That's when I was able to do that, when we were visiting friends and stuff like that. It smacked me across the face. It is such a good book, and it has really entrenched me in the camp of Jeff Lemire for the rest of my life. It comes off very, very real. And one of the real moments that I'm going to tell you about is a lot of the Jeff Lemire fully drawn stuff is in the future. It's in this weird future, and they're explaining it to you, and you're like, what is this? You know? But then when it goes to the prose, it tells you stories from the main character's past. And one of the stories that really sticks out is the family got a telemarketer phone call about a free trip to Florida, and the dad got bamboozled by it and packed the whole family up into the car and drove the family to Florida.
Someone just saw Nebraska.
Believing it was real.
Yeah.
And the whole story is about the kid basically telling you how terrible the trip was and how horrible the trip was and stuff like that, because it's all based around a weather balloon. Like he found this in a weather balloon and stuff like that. And it's really kind of sad. It's really haunting, and it's really, really different. And I think that when I was thinking about my list, that's the reason why I picked it. AD After Death by Scott Snyder and Jeff Lemire was the best comic book I read in 2017. And again, I was never expecting that to be the case. But if you're looking for like a really emotional, really haunting story that's going to surprise you, this is the book to read.
Nice.
It was really good. So there you go.
Sweet.
So Super Sons was your pick. 80 After Death was mine. What was almost your number one?
Most of the new Archie expansion from this year I really enjoyed.
Like Sabrina?
Like Sabrina, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, the continuation of that, even though I think it was only 2 issues, was...
Oh, I thought it came out this year. Was that it was...
No, the trade came out last year, and we got 2 new issues this year, including the Salem one-shot. They've been tremendous.
I also want to say forgiveness to everybody. Sorry to interrupt you. That
okay.
We're going to keep saying this year, even though we're actually in 2018.
Well, sorry. Deal with it. This publishing year, I guess.
Yeah.
Betty and Veronica Vixens, which is their biker gang book. Only 3 issues this year. Really fun, really cute, really nice twist on the characters. Jughead the Hunger got to be an ongoing series. Jughead's a werewolf. He kills Reggie in issue number 1, and Betty is from a family of werewolf hunters, and they have to decide how they're going to be together.
Isn't it crazy that there's this whole Archie expanded parallel universe line now?
And they're all amazing.
They're all good. Yeah.
Each new series that I dove into this year brought me joy, along with the continuing Archie title.
Yep.
So I've really enjoyed everything that they've brought out. Black Magic from Image Comics came back this year with Greg Rucka and Nicholas Scott. If you are a Chilling Adventures of Sabrina fan and you don't like having to wait 6 months between issues, I would really recommend picking this up. It is magic in the contemporary world in a dark setting. It's beautiful.
Anything else?
And it's one of my favorite books that's coming out so far. Those were my 2 main runner-ups. How about you? What made your also rans?
I have 3.
Okay.
One is Batman. Tom King's Batman run really kicked into second gear this year.
I agree.
And has become amazing. And I'm going to put it all on one thing. The engagement with Selena Kyle.
I knew you were going to say that.
Because I've always been a long fan of Selena and Bruce are like Lois and Clark. And then Tom ended the run this year. Tom King, of course, guest of this podcast.
Heck yeah.
Ended his Batman run this year. Well, he ended it for 2017, not completely. Where he did a 2-issue arc where Batman and Catwoman and Superman and Lois go on a double date. And it's one of the best single issues of the entire year. And it's another one of these ideas where you're like, this shouldn't work, but it really, really does. But it's really created this deep emotional look at Batman. And it's a run of Batman issues that I don't think has ever been done before, which is a mad accomplishment for Tom.
I agree.
Another independent series that I really love this series is God Country. Bonnie, I believe Donnie Coates. I'm not. He's writing.
Donnie Coates, Donnie Cates.
I've never met him. I don't know how to say his name. Apologies if he listens. He wrote this really great 5-issue miniseries basically about an old man with Alzheimer's finds this weapon from a god, and it basically makes him he basically can talk again, and he's young and he's virile and he can talk to his family again, and he fights the gods. And it's, of course, in Texas. It's set in the middle of nowhere, Texas. It was really great. It was another book that I didn't expect to be as good as I thought it was going to be. And it's one of the best series of the years. And then there's no way I cannot mention a series that finished this year that was one of the best ongoing runs, I think, of all time, The Flintstones.
Oh, I forgot The Flintstones.
The Flintstones.
That was my choice for last year.
The Flintstones finished its run this year, and I think it finished it on a high. And I don't know. I'm of 2 minds right now because Mark Russell, who wrote it, I would love to see him come back and do a season 2.
I know.
But also at the same time, I'm like, I don't know. Should you just leave it alone and just let that be perfect? I don't know. Because he's working on some of the, he's working on like Rough and Ready, I believe, and Snagglepuss are the books that he's working on now.
It is so singularly perfect, though, as a standalone run.
Well, there are some rumors that they're going to bring him back. There's also, I've heard some rumors that there might be a Flintstone Jetsons crossover miniseries.
That'd be so great.
So I
love that movie.
I would love to see him return, but if you haven't read The Flintstones by DC Comics, I know it sounds ridiculous, but it was so good.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's go into movies. Ashley, these are normal movies for 2017. No superheroes in them at all. Ashley, what did you think was the best movie of 2017?
As with every year, I didn't get to see all the movies that I wanted to this year, but I do think that 2017 was a bit of a lackluster year for movies. And my choice is actually something that I
Last
think...
Jedi. I knew it.
It's not on my list anywhere. Was actually something that I think I saw the same month that Super Sons came out in February is Get Out.
All right. February is a good month for you.
It was. It's all downhill after Valentine's Day. Get Out is, of course, Jordan Peele's horror movie. When Chris, a young African-American man, visits his white girlfriend's family estate, he becomes ensnared in a more sinister, real reason for the invitation. For me, this film embodied everything that we really need in modern storytelling. It updates a classic genre that many people have nostalgia for in a way that offers commentary on the modern world. I think all of the performances were amazing.
I agree.
I'm so glad that Daniel Kaluuya
is that the lead actor?
Yes. Is going to go on to a bigger, better career than ever. I'm excited to see him in Black Panther. Evil Josh Lyman.
God, he was in that movie.
Yeah. Was really, really...
Bradley Whitford.
Was really,
you're talking about.
Yeah. He was really great. And I think this is the kind of exciting thing that I want to see in filmmaking. I admire that Jordan Peele took a low-budget film and proved how inventive and thought-provoking it can be in a world of over-the-top action tentpole movies, which of course I love. But I think this is where Hollywood needs to focus its energy and its money if it wants to remain a relevant form of entertainment. I think Get Out embodies it perfectly, and I also think it's a pretty perfect allegory for the modern world.
I'd agree.
So if you haven't checked it out, highly recommend. It's all over the streaming services right now, and you didn't know that you needed a Jordan Peele horror movie.
Well, who knew that Jordan Peele would make the best horror movie of possibly the last decade?
I would completely agree.
You know,
because I didn't think so, and it wound up on my list. So, Jason, what was your best movie of 2017?
My best movie of 2017 is going to continue the theme of the year. It is 2017 was the year where I was surprised by things. And my movie can be explained in 2 words. Apes together. War for the Planet of the Apes, in my opinion, was the best movie I saw in 2017. It's the finale of the prequel Planet of the Apes trilogy. Whoever would have thought we had a prequel Planet of the Apes trilogy? But,
and they're great.
And all 3 movies are great. Not only does War of the Planet of the Apes complete a perfect science fiction trilogy, which is something that as genre fans we don't get very often.
Yeah.
But basically it's Caesar and his apes are forced into a deadly conflict with the last army of humans led by a ruthless colonel played by Woody Harrelson. Now, that is another thing that these movies have done really well. Each of these 3 movies have had great character actors. John Lithgow, Gary Oldman, and then now we end it with Woody Harrelson. But the thing that really knocked my socks off with War for the Planet of the Apes was just the confidence that director Matt Reeves and writer of this movie as well.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he wrote this movie. He also wrote Dawn for the Planet of the Apes as well.
Kudos to him.
He really had a confidence in this because there were so many scenes in this movie that are dialogueless.
Yeah.
There is no dialogue. And to be honest with you, I never thought a moment of this movie was boring at all. Now, a lot of that is he's also got a great second base hitter of Michael Giacchino with doing an amazing score, which I think is the best score of the 3. I've listened. I am a big fan of all 3 of these scores for the prequel Planet of the Apes movies, but I think this is the best one. I think it's so sad. It's so haunting. And he also gets some nice little overtures back to the original Jerry Goldsmith Planet of the Apes score. You can hear it if you listen for it. But I was so gobsmacked of how much I cared about this CGI creature played by Andy Serkis. Here's the thing. We see so many films out there where the CGI is suspect. Never once in any shot did I think Caesar looked bad. Not once.
I agree. There's a shot where it's tight on Caesar's face and it starts to snow. And nothing in that shot is real.
And it looks
real. And it is
real.
gorgeous.
It looks real. And I think that was another accomplishment. War for the Planet of the Apes knocked my socks off. And I think it was one of the stronger science fiction films. And also a little bit is the legacy of that trilogy.
Sure.
But man, if you have not seen any of this trilogy, I highly, highly recommend it. And now with all three, if you get to watch them as a journey, I'm going to say it right now. I'm a big fan of the original Planet of the Apes movie with Charlton Heston. I think it is such a strong movie with a screenplay by Rod Serling of The Twilight Zone. This trilogy beats that movie.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yep. It was so good. Nothing else affected me like War for the Planet of the Apes.
Cool.
So in my honorable mentions, real quick, I just want to mention them because my top honorable mention was your choice, Get Out.
Hey.
My other choices for honorable mention was Blade Runner 2049. It is a solid science fiction movie. And then also another movie that I think, I'm going to say it right now, I think might have a good shot at winning Best Picture of 2017, Dunkirk.
Dunkirk is in my runner-ups as well.
Do you have any other ones?
I have The Shape of Water,
good one.
which I really, really liked. I don't think it's a perfect movie, but I feel like it really keyed in and I understood what it was from the beginning. This is the kind of movie that I want to see more of instead of another Ant-Man movie. I also think The Disaster Artist was amazing.
I almost, there was a time where I almost put Disaster Artist as the best movie.
I thought you might have. And also The Big Sick, which again, I don't think is a perfect movie, but is the kind of movie that I want to see more of. And I think that we got these sort of smaller movies, with the exception maybe of Dunkirk, is the kind of thing that I think we need to be moving toward in the entertainment industry.
Well, I would say of all the movies we've mentioned, I would say it's probably the debate between War for the Planet of the Apes or Blade Runner with who had the bigger budget.
That's true. That is true.
Now, in our Facebook group, The Mind University, which is exclusive to our $15 patrons over at patreon.com/Jawiin, some of the people in there made their picks for Best Movie of the Year, and I just wanted to include them here.
Cool.
Musa Chaudhry, I might be saying that name wrong, said The Shape of Water.
Yeah.
Jordan Wilson said Justice League and Thor Ragnarok. Dusty Pearson said, I'd have to say Logan, which again might be in some of our comic book movies. Alexander Marzona said Lady Bird and Get Out. I haven't seen Lady Bird. Sam Martinez said Thor Ragnarok. And Austin Deutsch said It, which I've heard a lot of good things about. I haven't seen that one either.
I haven't seen it.
So yeah, if you want to go over there and make your choices as well, you got to go over that Facebook group.
Nice.
But it's only for our patrons. All right, so let's move into comic book movies.
Dun, dun, dun.
Now, these specifically have to be movies based on a comic book. Ashley, I think I'm going to know what your choice is. What is your choice for the best comic book movie of 2017? Now, real quick, let's remind everybody. It's I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I might miss some. Logan, Wonder Woman, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Spider-Man Homecoming, Thor Ragnarok, Justice League, and Kingsman, sort of?
Kingsman's not on any of
Now, there might be a couple in there I'm missing, but those are the basic big ones.
Yeah, it's Wonder Woman, bar none. I'm not going to say too much about it because I've talked about it extensively on this podcast.
We did a review for it on this podcast.
On every other podcast and on our YouTube channel. It's a movie that represented me in a way I didn't knew I needed. Upon multiple viewings, it gets better. It doesn't lose anything, which is often a problem with superhero and genre movies. They get less funny or less interesting the more you see them. I think it's going to be as impactful as the Christopher Reeves Superman movie. And to me, there was absolutely zero contest with anything else this year. Wonder Woman is the top of the pile where she deserves to be, standing with her spear, murdering men. What is your favorite comic book movie of the year, Jason?
Well, in my favorite comic book movie of the year, there's a scene where people are standing outside and then they hear a piano play. And Chris Pine delivers a line I haven't heard him sing in several years, and they're talking about Charlie, of course, part of the category. Of course, it's Wonder Woman. Mm-hmm. There is no other choice, and I think the only other movie that could possibly fight Wonder Woman for the number one spot is Logan.
I agree. Actually, my runners-up, I wrote none because I did really enjoy Logan, and I did have an emotional response to Logan. but it didn't do it for me the way Wonder Woman did.
Agreed. And this is our choice.
And it is. And I would understand why people would make a case for Logan.
Yes.
I think Logan is a tremendous accomplishment in the X-Men universe. And I think Hugh Jackman especially should be, I think it's his best work to date.
And it's a beautiful movie. It's so well shot.
It is beautiful. Yeah. And it's a great look at what the superhero genre can be outside of, again, these tentpole action movies that we're sort of used to seeing. But yeah, it's just got to be Wonder Woman.
I agree with you. It is totally Wonder Woman because Wonder Woman has transcended. I mean, I looked at the best of 2017 of Time magazine, and Wonder Woman's on the cover. No other superhero movie is on that cover. And I noticed several other lists, and a couple times on Twitter, Gal Gadot has been retweeting them. Because these best of lists are making these collages of 2017. Wonder Woman's in every one of them. And I think there is no doubt. And that's what I said. Like, Wonder Woman transcended all of media. I think everybody saw Wonder Woman, and I know very few people that dislike that movie. And to me, Wonder Woman has cemented itself, I think, more so than maybe some of the Dark Knight trilogy movies, up there with Superman 77.
I would agree with that.
You know, I would put Dark Knight up there. Like, it's kind of nice now that all of the trilogy has an amazing transcendent movie.
Yes,
you go Wonder Woman, Dark Knight, Superman 77.
And not to take away from the Dark Knight, because I love the Dark Knight, but I don't think it makes you feel the way Wonder Woman makes you feel.
And I have said this to several people this year. I think you are lying to yourself when somebody asks you what is the best movie moment of 2017, and if you don't say No Man's Land, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah.
Because I felt that moment in the theater, and by that I meant you could feel it in the crowd of everybody being like, what is this?
Yeah.
Oh my God. And the music swells and she starts deflecting those bullets.
It makes me cry every time we watch it.
And then the soldiers come with her. Like, you're just like, oh my God, this is something I never knew I needed, and I never knew that it would be so transcendent. It's so amazing. Like, look, I saw a lot of movies this year. No scene in any other movie this year beat that scene. And that is why Wonder Woman is number one. Like, to be honest with you, I almost thought you were going to put Wonder Woman in both slots.
I thought about it, but I knew you would let me get away with that.
Yeah, I would have let you get away with it. I would have called you on it. But the only, second place, maybe Logan. That's it.
Yeah,
Logan
to me, and not to diminish anything from Logan, but it is a far and away second place.
I agree with you. But Logan is super, super strong. And the things that knock Logan not in this number one spot for me is basically the whole idea that he fights himself.
I agree. Yeah. But I do think it's the best Marvel branded movie that came out this year.
I would agree with you.
I also like Wonder Woman because I feel like the supporting cast is very strong in it as well.
So good.
They're great as a unit, and I really appreciate that. The men are not diminished by following a woman and following her lead. Everyone is made stronger for working together, which is really nice.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. But real quick before we move on, I already mentioned it once before, but we have a Patreon for this podcast. It's patreon.com/Jawiin. You can go over there. You can support this free podcast, and you can get yourself some more content, from us, including behind-the-scenes peeks at the production of our comic book Jupiter Jet.
Ooh.
You can get movie commentaries coming out there. We've already done
Frontier,
Justice League New Frontier, Batman Under the Red Hood is coming soon. Doctor Strange is around the corner, and your support on Patreon keeps this podcast moving along. And even the support of $1 a month makes a big difference. Think about it. That's only 25 cents an episode if you enjoy this podcast. So go over to patreon.com/Jawiin and support our podcast if you enjoy it. And thank you to all the super friends that already do. You're the best. I love you.
Ooh, that's a commitment.
We're also going to do a Geek History Lesson Extra after this episode about our 2018 movie talk and some of the movies that we're really looking forward to.
Ooh, crazy.
So, all right, let's move into television. Ashley, television, I thought, in 2017, had a really good year.
I agree. I think it was a TV year and not a movie year.
So, I would say of this one, of the 2017 list, this was probably the hardest one to pick. So I'm very curious about your choice.
My choice is The Leftovers Season 3, the final season of The Leftovers. The Garvey and Murphy families come together as they desperately grasp for a system of belief to better explain what defies explanation. That's not a great synopsis, Amazon. What it
Yeah, Amazon.
The Leftovers is the show where 3% of the world's population...
Echo, rewrite your Amazon listing for The Leftovers Season 3. Echo. I'm trying to mess with people's
Isn't she
echoes.
called Alexa?
Oh, Alexa, damn it. Why did I say Echo?
Because it's an Amazon Echo, but she's called Alexa.
I just ruined my own joke. All right, that was the worst moment of 2017. Now 2018. We're starting out good. Leftovers, Season 3, fantastic season by Damon Lindelof.
Yeah. And so The Leftovers is the show where 3% of the world's population disappears, and we've spent 3 seasons exploring what that means. None of the episodes here are wasted, which is because it's an HBO show and it's a limited number of episodes.
Was it 7 episodes or 6? I don't remember.
7.
Whatever.
And this season so perfectly caps off this incredible and I think wildly underrated series.
Yes.
It does give you a possible explanation. So if you're one of those people who came out of Lost being like, why didn't they tell me anything? You're not left in the same place, but you're also not given a definitive explanation as to why everything has happened the way it happened. We jump forward significantly in time and see the ramifications of everybody's life choices and which characters have grown apart and which have grown closer together. I also think the finale, which is pretty understated, is out of this world good, but it's the kind of thing that you have to sit with in order to be able to appreciate. I think the acting is top notch, and I think in 10 years, this is going to be the show that everyone's asking, why didn't I watch this when it was on the air?
Yes, this will be HBO's new Wire.
Yeah.
Like 10 years from now, everybody will be like, how did I not watch The Leftovers when it was actually on the air?
Yeah. Justin Theroux is amazing in it. Carrie Coon is amazing in it. The Ninth Doctor is amazing in it. If you haven't seen it, power through season 1. Season 1's the toughest season to get to the ending in season 3. It is so satisfying on an emotional level.
Yep.
Which is an interesting way to describe it.
Amazing music by Max Richter.
Yes, Jason's always about the music.
Yep.
I know you liked this season as well. So,
you know what? I would tell you, because I do kind of keep a list just kind of roughly in my head of the best TV series finales, and Leftovers has entered that list. Their series finale, I think, is one of the strongest final episodes of a TV series of all time, especially the final scene.
I was going to say the final scene is so powerful.
So good. Like, and you said it very correctly. So understated. Mm-hmm. So understated.
There's nothing wasted about anything in this show. And also,
we have a special love of The Leftovers on this podcast, by the way, because remember when we reviewed season 1 on this podcast?
Yeah, we did.
Really early on.
Yeah, we definitely did. The Leftovers season 3 also does have, it dips its toe into genre and sci-fi a little bit.
Oh, yeah, a little bit.
In a really I won't. In a really interesting way. So I would encourage you, if that's the thing that's keeping you from watching this because it's not genre enough, you might be surprised.
Yeah.
So there, go watch The Leftovers. There's nudity in it. Jason, what is your... There's a lot of...
Best nudity of 2017, The Leftovers. I'd actually agree with that.
Justin Theroux's a good-looking man, so sure.
And that Carrie Coon, hello.
A good-looking woman.
Hello.
So there's
and Christopher Eccleston. Oh, didn't need that.
He's never naked in like a happy way.
Nope.
What's your favorite TV show?
Is there naked in a happy way?
There is.
Right.
With or without nudity of 2017.
My best television show of 2017 continues the theme of being surprised. There was a show that I was okay looking forward to, but it was a show, it was a Netflix show that I was kind of like, oh, I'll get around to it eventually. I didn't watch it the day it came out, and I sort of got to take my time with it a little bit because we usually have to blow through shows for reviewing purposes.
Yeah.
I'm really glad I got to sit with this one, and it grabbed me out of the gate. I'm talking about The Punisher.
But Jason, you don't really like The Punisher.
That is correct. But Netflix's Punisher was one of the most arresting television shows of this year, and I'm going to tell you why. The synopsis is, after exacting revenge on the people responsible for the deaths of his wife and children, Frank Castle uncovers a conspiracy that runs deeper than New York's criminal underworld. Now, of course, this continues the John Bernthal character that we saw in Daredevil Season 2, but it divorces itself from Daredevil Season 2 pretty quickly. In fact, they do it in the opening 3 minutes of episode 1. And then the series is like, okay, now that we've washed away our continuity, we're going to do whatever we want. The first episode of The Punisher, and I'm not going to spoil it because I want people to enjoy it, but I'm going to tell you what happens in the first episode.
Yeah.
Frank basically gives up being the Punisher, and he joins a construction crew, and he just gets a job to where he's helping demolish a building, and he can just sledgehammer a wall all day long in silence because he's still so angry at himself for the deaths of his family. And most of the first episode, Frank doesn't talk. He just keeps hitting this wall over and over and over again to work out his aggression. And I cannot think of any better metaphor for the anger and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, that Frank would be experiencing after his wartime or after losing his family. Now, the show doesn't stop there. The show continues introducing us to a veterans support group. It introduces us to Billy Russell, excuse me. Billy Russell, who is played by an amazing actor from Westworld. I didn't look up his name. Apologies. And he was with Frank, and he has like turned his wartime into like sort of a private security company. He's a veteran. There's also another veteran who has made the support group. He lost his leg in Afghanistan.
I like him a lot.
And then we meet a brand new veteran who's very young, who comes back and is very disillusioned. I'm going to say it right now because I'm going to give you some illusions. He's very similar to Timothy McVeigh, if you know the Oklahoma City bomber. Now, this series spends its time showing us the different view of post-traumatic stress disorder and the idea that there is this population especially in America right now, that doesn't get a lot of attention. And now, by saying that, I'm not diminishing any minority or women or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, there is this population of over 1 million people now, combat veterans, that exists because of the war on terror. And it is now, this war on terror is lasting over 12 years. Actually, even longer than that, excuse me. I think 16 years, maybe, that these men, these women, these fathers, these sons that have experienced traumatic things and don't know how to deal with our society anymore and don't feel like they belong in our society. That's what this show is. Now, I'm telling you this because the Punisher is a character that just shoots people with a skull and spits on the ground. And that's not what this show is. And it blew me away. I'm also going to tell you right now, this is the most accurate representation of post-traumatic stress disorder I have ever seen. It is so shocking. And it, again, is so understated. It's not really super violent. There's only like 2 episodes where it gets Punisher violent, but I think it earns those moments. They're both towards the end. Now, I've heard a lot of people call this series boring. If you are one of those people, I would say give this show another chance, because this show is trying something brand new. And to be honest with you, I think it is the best Marvel live action anything. I like it better than any of those movies, and I like it better than any of the Netflix shows.
And you've been a big Daredevil proponent.
And I love Daredevil, and I'm a big fan of the Iron Man movie, and I love Captain America Winter Soldier. This is better than all of them. Better. And also, this is the first of those Netflix Marvel series that I feel it only has 1 weak episode out of 13. 1. I think... Now, I don't think the episode's bad. I just think it stumbles.
That's fair.
And I think you could lift that episode out and you wouldn't miss it. But unlike some of those other series like Luke Cage, I think
Jessica Jones.
Yeah, exactly. I think like half of the season is bad. And you could say the same thing of Daredevil as well. Let me tell you about one scene.
Okay.
Just to show you the understated and to sell you the series. There's one episode where its cold open begins with the younger veteran guy. And he breaks into this apartment and he's gathering something. I don't quite remember what he's doing, but there's a bird in there. And there's 2 little birds. I think they're little canaries. And he opens the cage and he's like, "You're free. Go." Taps on their cage. They don't move. Those birds don't move. So the whole cold open is him being perplexed that these birds don't want to leave their cage. He taps on the cage. He puts their water outside. He literally opens up the apartment window, puts their cage right next to the window and be like, go, go, go. The birds don't move. And the cold open ends. He closes the cage.
Wow.
Now,
not what you'd expect from a Punisher show.
Right? That's the cold open of, I think, episode 7 or 8. And what an amazing metaphor for men who have come back home. They're free, but they're not free at all. They're still... I saw that and I was like, oh my God. And this is in a Marvel comic book Punisher series.
Yeah.
I know I talked a lot about this, but that is why it is my best series of 2017. It is so amazing. Please give it a chance and look past the comic book nature of it, because this show is so relevant. And this is, again, it's about a subsection of our American culture right now that I think a lot of people ignore.
I would agree.
So my honorable mentions were The Leftovers as well. Leftovers final season, I think, was really great. I have a couple other ones. What other ones do you have?
I have The Americans season 5, which is the second to last season that we got this year. Doctor Who season 10. It is my favorite Capaldi season. I love Bill. She's great. And Vice Principals season 2.
Oh, Vice Principals was on my list as well.
Which is a show that I didn't know I was going to enjoy as much as I have. And I just think it's a really clean, tight season and a great goodbye to these characters.
Doctor Who series 10 was on my list as well. Peter Capaldi's final goodbye to the series is so good. And as a big Doctor Who fan, I think it's one of the strongest seasons of the entire history of Doctor Who. And I'm also going to put a shout out to a thing I saw towards the very end of the year. Godless on Netflix was one of the best things I saw this year. The amazing cinematography with, again, such an understated Western. And Jeff Daniels is amazing. And I think he could possibly win an Emmy for Godless.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Cool.
All right, so let's move on into books.
Prose books.
Now, prose books, these are books without pictures. They could have pictures in them, okay? Harry Potter books have pictures in them, so we're okay with that. But we have to kind of stretch things around for books because... as this happened,
don't always read the book that were published this year.
Exactly. So this is just a book that we have read in this year, not specifically, or could not be a book that was released this year. Ashley, what is a prose book that you really enjoyed that you think our listeners should check out?
My best prose book of this year was also turned into a movie this year that I didn't see yet, called Call Me By Your Name. 17-year-old Elio faces yet another lazy summer at his parents' home on the Italian coast. As in the past, his family will host a young scholar for 6 weeks, someone to help Elio's father with his research. Oliver, the handsome American visitor, charms everyone he meets with his cavalier manner. So not only is this a really beautiful story about two men who come together because they understand each other better than anyone else in the world, a lot like Brokeback Mountain, if you want to think about it that way. It's a really beautifully written story. The language is out of this world, and it pairs really nicely with a pretty straightforward narrative. You know, boy meets boy. They have a little conflict. They fall in love. They don't get to be together at the end. They meet up a couple years later and talk it all out. It's a book I'd never heard of. It was recommended to me by a friend of mine, Patrick McMillan. Shout out to him. He listens to this podcast. Thank you for lending me your copy that I still have. Sorry.
He's also one of our patrons.
He is one of our patrons. Yeah. Because I asked him, I was like, hey, do you have any good gay books that I can read? And this is what he recommended.
Is that really how you said it?
I think so, yeah, probably. I think I said, do you have any good gay love stories I can read? Because we've just been reading Check Please. And it really is. It's really wonderful. If you like things like Jeffrey Eugenides books or, again, Brokeback Mountain, Call Me By Your Name is very much in the same vein. It does what I think only prose books could do with the heightened language and with the examination internally of the emotion that... while I'm sure the movie is good, you just can't do on screen. I also like that they set it in Italy so that at 17, the younger character is legal by Italian standards. Because if this were America, there would be some weirder overtones to it. And I do like, I'm not a huge romance fan, but I do like the idea of two people who are so inextricably drawn together that they just have to be together no matter what. Yeah. Even if it doesn't always wind up...
Star-crossed lovers idea.
Yeah, but even if it doesn't wind up happily ever after. Like, I'm okay with that, with this beautiful moment in their lives.
Did you just give us a spoiler?
I think I said that when I described the book.
Oh, man.
But that's often what happens in these books.
Okay.
It was just hands down the best thing I read this year.
Cool.
And I tore through it in like 3 days, which I always think is the mark of a great book.
Sure.
And I would recommend people picking it up before they see the movie because the book is always better.
Oh, I don't have enough time for that. I plan on seeing that movie, but
it's like 150 pages. It's not a very long book.
No, I don't have time.
Look, it's sitting on our kitchen table. Jason, what was your best word book of 2017?
My best book that had words in it, English words specifically.
Did you read other language books this year?
Don't judge me.
I'm not judging.
Is Abaddon's Gate. It is book 3 in the Expanse series. Now, I am a big fan of the Expanse. It is a great prose book series, but much like Game of Thrones, there's like 7 books in the series now, and
they're huge,
and they're all about 1,000 pages. So I'm slowly working my way through. There's a great television show on Sci-Fi with 2 amazing seasons. The Expanse season 2. It almost made it into my honorable mentions, but there was just so much good television this year. Abaddon's Gate basically is by James S.A. Corey. It is about a conflict in the solar system that involves Earth, Mars, and the asteroid belt, colonies of people living on asteroids that are referred to as belters. And again, as I said, it is the 3rd title. If you know anything about the Expanse series, or if you watch the TV show, you know it's about Captain Holden and his crew, the Rocinante, and sort of how they bounce between the 3 different factions in sort of this solar system Cold War. Now, through 3 books, you kind of get the handle of like, oh, this is how this universe operates. This is how it works. I get it. There was a moment in Abaddon's Gate that I will not spoil at all, that happens towards the end that is very akin to Neo learning the Matrix is real.
Ooh, interesting.
And it completely flips the table of the Expanse universe and does something that is completely unexpected. And I am halfway through the 4th book right now, and reading the 4th book is one of those ideas that you're like, oh man, if you would have told me this is where this series is going, I never would have believed you.
Wow.
And so I cannot believe that I still have 4 more books to go. So, but book 3 is where that flip happens. I do think so far, even though I'm only halfway through the 4th book, it is the best book in the Expanse series, but it was such an engaging, such an exciting book. And if you like the TV series of all, if you're ever curious about the TV series, there is enough differences. I would say that you totally can read the book series and not be bored with it, which was a little bit of my complaint with Game of Thrones, I found, especially the first Game of Thrones book. Like,
it is a straight up adaptation.
It's straight up. There's characters in the books that do not exist in the TV show, so there's enough differences, I find. But Abaddon's Gate of the Expanse series was my favorite book of 2017.
Nice.
All right, let's go to podcasts.
Do you want to do runner-ups?
Oh, I didn't have any runner-ups. Did you?
Oh, I did.
I'm sorry.
So I read 2 really great Sherlock pastiches this year that I want to shout out. The Detective and the Woman and A Study in Scarlet Women. The Detective and the Woman is like Sherlock is sent to Florida to save Irene Adler after she has bested him. I didn't think I would like it. It was really, really good. It started out as a NaNoWriMo book, so I have a lot of respect for the fact that it became a real book and it was good. And then A Study in Scarlet Women examines what if Sherlock and Watson were actually women who solved crimes and those were their male counterparts as published in the newspaper. A Study in Scarlet Women is ostensibly a romance novel. You'll find it in the romance section of your bookstore, but there's no sex in it, and it's just a really good pastiche.
Cool.
So I just wanted to shout those 2 out.
I got a couple. I got it off the top of my head.
Okay.
Darknet by Ben Percy came out this year. That's a great book.
Nice.
And also, I would give Artemis by Andy Weir, which is Andy Weir's second book after The Martian.
Nice.
And it's also as good. All right, let's go into podcasts. Ashley, you cannot say Geek History Lesson.
Damn it.
But what would you say was the best podcast you listened to in 2017?
Real quick before anyone decides to tweet us, we don't include any networks that we are affiliated with, that we have friends in when we make these choices. So no Major Spoilers Podcast Network, no Frog Pants.
Like The Morning Stream.
Yeah, no Kevin Smith podcasts, because we don't think that's fair to our friends.
Yep.
So my choice for 2017 was a little thing that brought me the most joy, and it is called Screw It, it, we're just going to talk about the Beatles.
Oh, it's a great podcast.
And I think that tells you everything that it's about.
I mean, we do know people that have been on that, though.
We do, but they're not like our bestie best friends.
Sure.
I would say we're enough people removed from that.
All right.
It's basically a bunch of UCB comedy nerds headed by Will Hines who get together and talk about how much they love the Beatles. I think it started late last year, not long after the election results came in and everyone was trying to just bring a little more happiness into the world. I didn't think it was a great idea for a podcast. And then I started listening to it and we really, really loved it.
I agree. I liked it a lot. Their best episodes are the ones where they specifically pick an album and then talk through it.
Yes.
Song by song.
We went and saw them live and it was super fun. So I just wanted to shout it out because I also think not enough people know about it.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, there's not that much. They just talk about how great the Beatles are because they're the greatest band of all time, guys. Get on board with it or don't. How about you? What's your favorite podcast of 2017?
My favorite podcast.
He's got sound effects again.
It needs music.
Oh, man.
This podcast, called Star Trek TNC, created the final journey of Jason's enjoyment of 2017. I don't know how to keep this going. My favorite podcast of this year was, I'll keep the music.
Okay.
I was waiting for Picard. I didn't know if he's going to be on this one. Nope, he's not in it. There is a podcast by Matt Myra and Andrew Secunda called Star Trek TNC. It's Star Trek: The Next Conversation. And if you know Matt Myra, he's on Nerdist. He also he hosts After Trek on Star Trek Discovery. And Andrew Secunda is a writer on The Goldbergs. And they are two very funny gentlemen. And apparently Andrew Secunda had never seen Star Trek: The Next Generation ever, any episode. So they started through season 1 of Star Trek: The Next Generation. That is one of my favorite television shows of all time. I have watched through that series probably 4 or 5 times. So like I know almost every episode off the back of my hand. I can remember them. So it just became so enjoyable to basically rewatch these episodes through their minds.
Yeah,
mouth holes
through their lens.
Yeah, and especially since if you know anything about Star Trek: Next Generation, season 1 was so bad.
Yeah,
and so to hear Andrew's frustrations of having to get through season 1 and season 2 is pretty funny. The podcast is now about to hit season 3, so they're about to actually get into some really interesting TNG episodes. It'll be interesting to see if it can create it. But it was the podcast I always went to because it was like going back to the comfort blanket, and it was so much fun. It's called Star Trek The Next Conversation, and I highly recommend it. If you're any kind of Star Trek fan, or if you're not, watch the show with them. Just do it. There you go. What honorable mentions podcast did you have?
My honorable mentions are S-Town, which was another,
Me too.
Hey, we're trying to capture the serial zeitgeist.
Made by the same people.
I couldn't, in good conscience, make it my choice because it takes until the second episode to get good. They really bury the lead on what is interesting about this podcast. And then I think in their final episode, in their summation, they're a little denigrating about
the main character.
Well, he's not a character, he's a real person, about the main focus.
Sure.
And I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that's polite given what happened. If you are interested in listening to it, I would recommend not Googling it, because you'll spoil the ending for yourself.
You will spoil the ending.
But it's definitely worth listening to, but it only slotted into my runner-up. Don't Get Me Started, which is another UCB-centric podcast.
Which ended this year.
Sadly, hosted by Will Hines. And it's a bunch of usually comedian actor types talking about not what they do, but what they love. And it is fascinating to hear what people love. And you'll be surprised which subjects you might actually be convinced you care about. And then thirdly, a podcast that I got turned on to this year called Grizzly Kiki, which is a drag-centric podcast that I didn't know existed, and I really, really like.
Cool. My honorable mention was S-Town as well, which I thought was one of the best podcasts of the year.
I kind of thought you might choose that.
I just had more fun with Star Trek TNC.
Yeah. Well, when you picked it, I was like, I'm not surprised.
Yep. All right, let's go into the most self-indulgent, but the most important category of 2017. What was our favorite episode of our own podcast, Geek History Lesson? Ashley,
yeah.
This is my favorite category of every time we do one of these episodes. What was your favorite episode of only the past year, 2017?
Yeah, so this was hard. I had to go look back at our feed, and I forgot that we did like Silk this year.
We had a lot. I'll tell you this. This one was also very difficult to me. We had a lot, not to toot our own horns, we had a lot of like what I thought were some of our best episodes in this past year.
So because this is me, I picked the episode that I taught that I liked the best.
Okay, sure.
And it's actually one of our more recent ones.
To your own horn.
I will. Thank you. I really enjoyed doing the cyborg episode because I didn't know initially if there was going to be enough there to do outside of our Teen Titans episode. And because it really gave me an appreciation for how underrated this character is and how wonderful he was. And we got a lot of really good feedback, which I'm not going to lie, shapes how we think about the episode.
Sure.
How people react to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it surprised me the most, which is why I chose it. How about you? What was your favorite GHL of the past year?
Again, I said this was a very tough one for me to think about, but also I remember this episode being tough to write, but also we got such a massive response for it, and it was a lot of fun, and I had a lot of people that I would consider sort of more famous than us email me and say how much they love this episode. It was episode 175, our Batman chronological timeline.
That was a hard episode.
I think that was such a hard episode to write, but it was such a fun episode to do. And I really think it's one of the best episodes that we've ever done. Mm-hmm. And it was just so much fun. Now, for my honorable mentions, of course, I would be remiss if I did not mention the Doctor Strange show.
That's right in there.
Because that was such a fun, and I turned out so much better, and I'm glad that people liked it. Mm-hmm. I think based on the response we saw, I think the Doctor Strange show might become our regular Christmas episode.
Nice.
I hope everybody is all in on that. And then the other one was our Justice League Part 2 with Mark Waid. Mm-hmm. Just because I thought the Justice League, that was where I got to pitch you on my love for Grant Morrison's JLA. And then also we had Mark Waid on the show, and he was a delight.
Yeah. I also really liked our Baywatch episode because
I almost put that one too.
It was a very atypical geek history lesson.
With Nick Mundy.
And also Mundy made me laugh the entire time.
Yep.
So
probably the weirdest episode we ever done.
It was a ton of fun to do, and it was one of those things where we had nothing really to cover that week, and so I think I said, well, we could do Baywatch, and so we did.
All right. Well, I think that is it for our entire best of 2017 list. We'll see if we remember in 2019 whether we remember to split off comic book TV shows. But I just want to say one of the best things about the last year was how much you guys supported this podcast and how much you guys supported our new comic book, Jupiter Jet. So thank you so much for that. We're going to enter the Geek History Lesson Honor Roll before we close out this episode. And actually, how can they join the Geek History Lesson Honor Roll?
It's pretty easy. You just got to open up your iTunes, go to Geek History Lesson, give us a 5-star review, write whatever you want, and we'll read it.
That's right, because it helps us on iTunes. This week, the review comes from MKOK40917.
Sweet.
They say, I love this podcast, and I love the Meet Cute section because it takes me back to when I first met the character and truly got into comic books. Michael just revealed that MKOK40917 is actually him.
Jason, how did you first meet Cute 2017?
When I woke up. All right. Thank you so much for that review, Michael. And if you want to join the Geek History Lesson Honor Roll, go over to iTunes, give us a 5-star review. As Ashley said, doesn't matter what you write. You do it, we'll read it. Okay. And don't forget our Geek History Lesson Extra over on patreon.com/Jawiin is predictions for 2018. Woo-woo. Ashley, if they want to suggest some future episodes for the 2018 year of Geek History Lesson, where can they do that?
Well, if you would like to add to our 200-item list long of suggestions, you can head on over to Facebook.com/GeekHistoryLesson, GeekHistoryLesson.com, or on Twitter at GHL Podcast. There's a ton of ways to contact us in all of those places.
You can follow me on Twitter at Jawiin, Jawiin. You can follow Ashley on Twitter at Ashley V. Robinson, and you can follow the show on Twitter at GHL Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We got an exciting year planned, so stay tuned. I am Jason Won't Remember Comic Book TV Shows Next Year Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson, and Professor Jason, why don't you dismiss the first class, both of the year?
We promise to make Geek History Lesson the best podcast of 2018. Engage!